According to peer research, around 24% of people raised as Muslims in the US end up leaving the faith, a number that mirrors the disaffiliation rates of Christianity. Globally, the trend is harder to track due to the stigma and legal punishment, but it's clear. Apostasy is on the rise, and the internet is playing a massive role. Platforms like Reddit's ex-Muslim with over 400,000 members, and Twitter hashtags like ex-Muslim have created safe spaces for people to openly discuss their doubts, share their stories, and find solidarity. And this isn't just limited to Western countries. In places like Saudi Arabia, surveys suggest a significant portion of the youth, up to 25%, identify as non-religious. Think about that. In a country where atheism is equated with terrorism, 1 in 4 young people is questioning religion. Women in Iran are openly shedding their hijabs at great risk to their lives. Of course, it's not just about private doubt anymore.
Alright, let's dive into this because honestly, it's laughable. First, this claim about peer research saying that 24% of people raised as Muslims in the US leave the faith. Okay, cool. But he's completely ignoring the fact that the US is one of the most secular, non-religious countries out there. People leave religions for all sorts of reasons, but it doesn't mean it's some huge trend worldwide. You really think that's a reflection of Islam globally? Nah, man, that's just the reality of living in a place like the US, where secularism is on the rise. It's the same for Christianity too, so this whole marrying thing doesn't hold up at all. Then this whole thing about stigma and legal punishment making it hard to track apostasy. Look, just because it's hard to track doesn't mean there's some massive hidden trend of people leaving Islam all over the world. He wants to make it sound like Islam's in decline because of some underground movement, but it's just not the case. Now the Saudi Arabia claim, he's like, oh, 1 in 4 young people are non-religious. Okay, fine, but the real question is, how do we even know that? And here's where it really falls out apart. The 1 in 4 figure for Saudi Arabia, yeah, that's a huge exaggeration. I actually went through the whole article, and it didn't say anywhere that 1 in 4 young people or 25% of was having these non-religious people. It talks about Saudi Arabia, but it didn't say 25%. It wasn't even in the 20s. And it also talks about Turkey and Libya, which he doesn't mention, but they're in the article. Sure, there's been an increase in non-religious people in these countries, but we're not talking about any huge shifts here. In Turkey, atheists went from 1% to 3% between 2008 and 2018. Still a small percentage overall. And in Libya, though there's a number rising of non-religious individuals, there's no concrete data to prove up that's the idea of max exodus from Islam. And then he brings up Iran with women shedding their hijabs. What's the point he's trying to make? This isn't some massive exodus from Islam. None of them said that they were leaving Islam just because they were shedding their hijabs. And I can agree that the Iranian government is quite oppressive, and they're a Shia state, but that doesn't mean that they're leaving Islam. Anyway, here's a bottom line. This guy's throwing out some numbers and examples, hoping it makes it sound like Islam is falling apart. But when you look at it properly, the whole argument is just literally garbage. The trends are more complex than he's making them out to be. He doesn't get it, and I'm sitting here refuting his nonsense because I actually went through his sources that he barely provided. He just got here and provided me with any sources, man. And one of the sources, he just made stuff up.
The internet has turned Islam into a global meme. On platforms like TikTok and YouTube, creators openly critique Islamic doctrines, hadith, and the questionable aspects of Muhammad's life, all with a healthy dose of humor. Online, some pretty funny questions are being asked. Why did Muhammad ban dogs and music but not slavery? Why did he marry Aisha, who was 6 years old? Are you seriously saying he rode a flying donkey to heaven and split the moon? For younger Muslims, these hilarious questions help to challenge taboos. And then there's a rise of public ex-Muslim voices, people like Ayaan Hirsi Ali and the apostate prophet. These figures, once unimaginable, are now leading the charge in normalizing criticism of Islam. But this wave of criticism isn't just coming from within. In the West, critics of Islam have long been challenging its sacred status in public discourse.
Alright, let's tear this one apart. First, let's address the idea of Islam becoming a global meme on the internet. Yeah, sure, Islam has become a topic of discussion online, but guess what? That's true for every major religion. Just because something's talked about on TikTok or YouTube doesn't automatically make it a meme. There's a huge difference between making jokes about something and actually refuting its beliefs or teachings. The fact that people are questioning Islam or poking fun at it online isn't some new phenomenon. It's called freedom of speech in a secular world, and it's been happening to every religion, including Christianity, Judaism, and others. This is nothing groundbreaking. Now the question he brings up about Muhammad, peace be upon him. Why did Muhammad, peace be upon him, ban dogs and music but not slavery? These are the same tired surface-level arguments that anyone who spent 5 minutes looking into Islam might ask. But they're also easy to debunk, so let's go. Why did Muhammad, peace be upon him, ban dogs? Well, it's not about hating dogs, it's just a matter of health and hygiene. Dogs are unclean animals, and the ban had more to do with preventing disease than a personal vendetta against them. Why did Muhammad, peace be upon him, ban music? There are differing opinions here, but many scholars say that the ban was related to the fact that music often led to immoral behavior, especially in a time and place where people have much to do other than social gatherings. Again, it's a contextual thing. And also, if you look at the lyrics of today, you'll notice how dirty it is, and it's not something worth listening to. Next, why did he marry Aisha at 6 years old? This one is heavily misinterpreted. First of all, Aisha's marriage to Muhammad, peace be upon him, wasn't consummated until she was older. Also, marriage ages in the 7th century were very different from what we consider appropriate today. Context is everything, and judging historical figures by today's standards is anachronistic and unfair, and it's also a fallacy called presentism. So Muhammad, peace be upon him, ride a flying donkey. This is an example of how myths and misconceptions can get spread. The story of the Buraq is often misunderstood and turned into a joke by critics. It shows a miraculous journey the Prophet, peace be upon him, took to the heavens. As for the so-called rise of public ex-Muslim voices like Ayaan Hirsi Ali and the apostate prophet, okay, these people have their platforms for sure. But let's not pretend that this is some new wave of intellectual thought. Ex-Muslim voices exist because they can leave Islam if they don't fear the apostasy law or they're in a country that does not use Sharia law. That doesn't mean Islam is somehow losing its foundation or that these individuals represent a huge shift in global belief system. There are thousands, if not millions, of Muslims who disagree with their views. The fact that people can publicly criticize Islam only proves that in many parts of the world, Islam is secure enough in its beliefs to handle such critiques. And finally, about the claim that this criticism isn't just coming from within the West. Yeah, of course, every religion faces criticism, but that doesn't mean that the religion is in crisis. Critics from the West or from anywhere else have always existed. There's a difference between making criticism and claiming the whole thing is falling apart. Every religion has been critiqued in the past, but the ones with strong foundations, like Islam, continue to thrive despite that. The bottom line, these arguments are weak and based on misconceptions, selective reading, and surface-level questions. Just because there's criticism doesn't mean the entire system is breaking down. These critiques are nothing new, and they certainly don't mean Islam is in trouble.
Christopher Hitchens, the late, great defender of free thought, who infamously was extremely critical of Islam. And let's not forget cultural moments that shattered the walls of sacredness. In 2006, South Park notoriously aired episodes poking fun at the Prophet Muhammad, sparking outrage and discussions about the limits of satire. Then there's Charlie Hebdo, the French satirical magazine that became globally infamous for its provocative drawings of Muhammad. The tragic terrorist attack on their offices in 2015 once again demonstrated the dangers of criticizing Islam, but it also galvanized a global defense of free speech. These events and figures have played a massive role in normalizing public criticism of Islam in the West. They've challenged not just the religion, but the societal fear of questioning it, which is something I spoke about in this video here.
Alright, let's break this down again, because once again we're dealing with weak arguments dressed up to sound impactful. First, Christopher Hitchens, yeah, the guy was critical of Islam, but he wasn't just going after Islam, he was going after all religions. Christianity, Judaism, Hinduism, anything. Hitchens was an equal opportunity critic, so let's not act like his arguments were some special takedown of Islam. He wasn't singling out Islam as uniquely flawed, he was railing against the concept of religion itself. And let's be real, Hitchens criticizing Islam isn't exactly groundbreaking. People have been criticizing Islam for centuries, just like every other religion. It doesn't mean Islam is on the verge of collapse. Now, South Park, seriously, using South Park to argue that Islam is losing its sacredness? South Park mocks literally everything. Christianity, Judaism, atheism, nobody's spared. This isn't some Islam-specific phenomenon. And let's be real here. How many Muslims even watch South Park? This isn't even shaking the faith of the global Muslim community. It's Western pop culture doing what it always does, poking fun at everyone. Then there's Charlie Hebdo. Look, this one is serious because we're talking about a tragedy. But here's the nuance. He's completely ignoring. Those attacks weren't about Islam rejecting free speech. They were about extremists acting outside the bounds of Islamic teachings. Extremists don't represent Islam or the 1.9 billion Muslims worldwide. Most Muslims condemn those attacks. Why? Because violence like that goes against the very teachings of Islam. And claiming that this normalized criticism of Islam, come on, if anything, it just deepened the divide between Muslims and non-Muslims. It didn't create some revolutionary movement of free speech. The West already had freedom of speech. This incident didn't change that. It just highlighted the misunderstandings and tensions between cultures. Here's the real kicker. Criticism of Islam does not mean Islam is crumbling. Christianity gets criticized. Judaism gets criticized. Atheism gets criticized. Does that mean that they're all falling apart too? No, of course not. Public criticism is just a part of modern society. And yet, despite all this criticism, Islam is still the fastest growing religion in the world. Why? Because most Muslims aren't losing their faith over a South Park episode or some edgy magazine. If anything, moments like this push Muslims to strengthen their understanding and reaffirm their beliefs. So yeah, this whole argument, another weak attempt to make isolated Western culture moments sound like they're dismantling Islam on a global scale. Spoiler alert, they're not.
And the result of all of this, Islam's sacred aura is fading. No longer untouchable. The religion is being questioned, debated, and ridiculed in ways that were unthinkable just a few decades ago. And it's driving Islamic leaders into a panic.
It is happening. It is happening continuously. It is going to become an avalanche, a tsunami that is going to hit our community in such a way that we will have a very difficult time standing. It will knock us over.
Alright, so this dude is throwing out another argument, but let's slow down and actually think this through. First, he says Islam's sacred aura is fading. Okay, cool, claim, but where's the proof? He's making it sound like the religion is just collapsing under the weight of ridicule, debates, and memes. But is that really the reality? He's cherry-picking moments like criticism online or public satire and acting like these isolated events represent some global shift. Look, questioning and debating Islam, or any religion for that matter, isn't new. It's literally been happening for centuries. You think scholars and thinkers throughout history didn't ask tough questions or challenge ideas? They did, and guess what? Islam is still here. It's not falling apart because someone made a TikTok or drew a cartoon. Now, let's talk about this random quote he brings up. He doesn't even tell us who said it or the context behind it. That's a huge red flag. Like, who is this person? What's the full speech about? Is this even a credible Islamic leader or just someone sharing personal fears? Without context, it's useless. You can't just drop a dramatic quote and act like it proves your point. That's not how evidence works. And let's address this tsunami comment. Even if someone did say that, it's one person's perspective. Does it reflect the reality of the Muslim community as a whole? No. Muslims aren't panicking over debates or criticism. Most are too busy living their lives, building their communities, and practicing their faith. Criticism of Islam doesn't mean its sacred aura is fading. It just means people are engaging with it. The truth is, his argument is all smoke and mirrors. He's saying random quotes, online debates, and satirical moments, throwing them together and hoping it sounds convincing. And when you dig into it, there's nothing substantial there. Islam isn't fragile like he's trying to make it sound. It's a faith with over 1 billion followers and 1,400 years of history. A few YouTube videos or speeches aren't going to change that.
Governments are